Welcome to Coast to Coast Sports, your college football edition. I'm Joey Caulo, your host. Today we have a full slate of football analysis. We will recap ASU's performance last week, preview the Oregon game this week, and what other big matchups we have on deck this weekend. Here we go. So I'm joined here by Ryan Sundeen and Alyanna Harina. Last week in a game at Tech, 45-52, and gave up over 600 yards of offense. Obviously not the recipe to do very well. Now ASU comes into this week at 1-2. But in that game last week, what went wrong? What did you see?
Well, for me, Joey, a lot of it was just being too late. I think that ASU woke up in the second half and decided it's time to get some touchdowns, it's time to get points on the board. I mean, 45 points in a regular college football game, that could be a win. I think ASU just woke up too late, and against a team like Texas Tech, who's also going to put up points, you need to come out gunning early into the game.
Yeah, an 18-point deficit, or I think it was a 25-point deficit at one point in the game. That's just too much to overcome. What did you see, Ryan?
I totally agree. The deficit was at 42-24, and yeah, we can't get down that early. ASU needs to look into trying to corral their offense so they don't have so many points early on in the game, and we have to fight back to try and get to those points. I mean, ASU did get to tie the game at 45, which was nice, but they can't finish it off with their defense on the field so long, and they're just playing that offense that's running all over the place.
You could definitely see the defense started cramping up in the second half. Karan Crump, who is arguably probably the best player on the defense, was injured in the second quarter, so I think you saw a lot of fallout from that, not being able to get after the passer and kind of create havoc. So going into the rest of the season at 1-2, Todd Graham obviously is on the hot seat, no bones about it. How many wins does he need to keep his job? We'll start with you, Alyanna.
I think he needs to go over 500. He needs over 6 wins.
So he needs at least 5 more wins to go 6-6. Yeah.
Yep, and I think that if it doesn't happen, he's going to finish out the seison, and that'll be it for him.
Yeah, because that would be the 3rd straight losing season for ASU. What do you see, Ryan?
I mean, yeah, he's definitely on the hot seat. If ASU could have another season where it goes 3-8. I agree that it has to be at least 500 for him to keep his job. But let's remember last year he started off 4-0, and then we went 1-7. That just can't happen. And when that does happen, you have to look at what he's doing as a coach and see if he needs to move on, and ASU needs to move on as a program.
Well, here's my follow-up question. Does he make it to the end of the season?
I feel like to fire a college football coach in the middle of the season is really dicey. It's really dicey. I wouldn't do it if I was in charge, so I don't think so.
I agree. I think especially with a team like ASU, I don't think they
you say you ride it out and just see, and then at the end of the season look back. A lot of programs have had that trouble lately. LSU obviously firing Les Miles had a lot of trouble with that. Baylor with had the same issue as well. But it wasn't all bad last week. Obviously, the offense did put up 45 points, so guys are making plays. Who did you see kind of stick out, and what's a highlight from that game? Who really did well? We'll start with you.
Well, let's start with Kyle Williams. He had 111 yards, so he's doing great. 2 touchdowns, and he had a 54-yard completion or a catch. And he's just playing really great. Breakout receiver this year. He can do a lot for us. Let's just see if he can do enough.
For me, it's Manny Wilkins. I think that he's doing everything that he needs to be doing for this ASU team. He broke the ASU record with over 120 attempted passes without a pick. I think Wilkins is the leader of this team, and I think that he was the highlight for that game against us.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback that, keep it with the offense. N'Keal Harry, he had 13 receptions, 148 yards. Him and Kyle Williams are a good little duo. Kyle Williams is fast, he can get open, and then Harry can just plain go get the ball. So we'll see with those guys. Those guys are really going to have to show up the next few games if ASU's hoping to win and keep Todd Graham his job. So when we come back, that does it for our review of the game against Tech last week. When we come back, we'll talk about Oregon and what's going to go down this weekend. ASU's 1-2. Oregon's coming in at 3-0. This is, you don't want to say it's a must-win since it is so early in the season, but at 1-2, you'd really like to at least start out 1-0 in conference, get you some momentum as the teeth of the schedule really is about to come up. Oregon, though, they like to start fast. They've scored 42 points in the first half in the first half of all 3 of their games. They have a new coach in Willie Taggart. He's really come in there and shook things up, and they're playing really good thus far. What do you guys see? What have they been able to do well 3 weeks into the season? Go ahead, Alyanna.
Well, for me, I think the matchup is just kind of stacked against ASU. I think that Oregon's very good with their run game. They're coming off a big win off of Wyoming, and I think that Oregon's coming and they're ready to play. I think that it's going to be it's going to be a huge challenge for ASU defense, especially with Karan Crump being gone.
Well, you know, it makes you worried when you talk about giving up over 600 yards last week to Texas Tech, and Oregon's coming in here averaging 609 yards per game with 56 points per game. The recipe for disaster.
Even on QB, Justin Herbert's a top-tier QB. He's calm in the pocket. He's composed, and I think that that's going to be a real struggle for ASU coming up.
What do you think? What are they going to do well tomorrow?
Well, ASU's Achilles heel, I feel like this season has been running backs. And Royce Freeman coming into the game, he's 3rd in the country right now with like 460 yards last game. He's doing really well. So what ASU had a problem with was Rashad Penny, and now Royce Freeman's almost a better Rashad Penny. So what are they going to do now? And it's just a lot of. Is he going to have another 150-yard game?
I would say Royce Freeman. I mean, guys forget he's been at Oregon a while now. He leads Oregon already. He's still got the whole season to go. He leads Oregon already in most career touches, most career touchdowns for a running back. I mean, he's a beast. He's going to get the ball 20, 25 times tomorrow night. He'll get his yards. It's just a matter of, for ASU, can you limit it? Yes, you're going to give up a big run. You're going to give up some big scores. But if you bend and not break, get field goals instead of touchdowns. If you can do that and kind of hang into the game at home, they may have a chance. But let's talk some over-unders in here. Right now, Vegas has the over-under with points scored at 75.5 points. To me, that's a little low. I think we're going to see about 100 points scored in this game tomorrow night. I could see Oregon definitely scoring 50, 60 points tomorrow. What do you kind of see the score being?
I'm saying around 89, 90. To be honest, I think it's going to be a really high-scoring game, and 45-52 doesn't seem out of reach again.
I got it around the same as Vegas. I think it's going to be around a 42-35 game. I don't think that I have enough faith in ASU's defense that they can get some stops, but who knows?
We'll see. I know also Oregon's been averaging with over 600 yards, and if you compare that with ASU, who were averaging around 450 yards per game, if both offenses show up, play how they've played thus far this season, we're looking at almost 1,000 yards in offense, which you think about this game could be 5.5 hours long. It'd just be as soon as the touchdown, commercial break, and keep going back and forth. But does ASU have a pair? Could you see 14.5-point underdogs, but do you see the game even being close tomorrow night? You said you see 52-45.
I mean, I think it could be close, but the score might not indicate what the game really tells. I think Oregon's going to jump to a big lead early, and then I think they're going to rush the ball and try and wear down the clock. And this defense is really good as well. Oregon's defense, we haven't really touched on them, but they're really good. They like to keep people.
They stole the defensive coordinator from Colorado.
Exactly,
who had a lot of success. So.
Yeah, so I don't know if ASU is going to be able to hang with them early.
I think that it all comes down to pressuring Oregon's QB, Justin Herbert. I think that they need to pressure him, and they need to pressure him early. But if anything, that's going to be their saving grace. But then you also have Freeman to worry about at that point. But I think a lot of pressure on Herbert's going to be.
I think fast start is key in any game, but especially this one. You're at home. You haven't done so well. You need some momentum going into the rest of the season.
Definitely.
So that does it for our preview on Oregon. When we come back, we'll touch base on a more national stage. Welcome back, folks. We got another busy weekend in college football. The main game tomorrow, you got number 16 TCU going on the road to number 8 Oklahoma State. That's almost a de facto Big 12 race game. Whoever wins that's going to have first place in the Big 12 and kind of have an inside route to the conference championship. Oklahoma State's got Mason Rudolph. He's creating a little bit of Heisman buzz, but tomorrow with a primetime game, this will really be his chance. If he performs well, he could have the Heisman wrapped up already in September, because Lamar Jackson last week, he had a chance to wrap it up pretty early. Obviously, they lost. You got to win big games. He wasn't able to do that. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. How do you guys see that game shaking out in Stillwater?
Well, for me, it's going to be, I think that OSU is going to gonna take on TCU's defense just fine. I think that TCU's defense has been on a rise, but I think that just the way Mason Rudolph and the OSU offensive line has been playing, I think that they're gonna come away with.
And that's a tough place to play. I mean, a lot of people don't realize Oklahoma State, what makes it so tough is there's only about 10 feet between the end of the sidelines and where the student section is. So the players are right next to the students. It's a tough place to play. It's loud. They'll show up ready for that 2:30 local kickoff time. Who do you got? You see TCU or Oklahoma State pulling it out tomorrow?
Well, I think Oklahoma State's going to probably pull it out. They haven't played a top 50 defense yet, and that's what TCU is definitely bringing in. TCU has a really good defense, but I think Oklahoma State's going to be up to the challenge. It helps that they're playing at home, like you said. Mason Rudolph, great quarterback. I think he's second right now with 11 touchdowns in America. So he's a great quarterback. I think he'll be able to pull it out for him.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make it a clean sweep. I think it's Rudolph's day. I think Oklahoma State will end up pulling away late in the game. But another big matchup, if you like defense, this is a game for you. Old-fashioned SEC defense. You got number 17 Mississippi State at number 11 Georgia. Mississippi State's coming off a big-time home win, 33-7 over LSU. No one really saw that coming. I certainly didn't see it coming. And then Georgia, also an impressive win on the road at Notre Dame. They pulled that out in a close game. Both teams can play defense. How do you see this one going?
I think that the biggest factor is going to be keeping Nick Fitzgerald in the pocket. I don't think that you should let him run that ball if you're Georgia. But I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be a very close game, probably 24-21. But other than that, it is a very defensive game, so I don't expect a lot of high scoring.
You know, and you touched on Nick Fitzgerald. That's a guy, he played really, really well against LSU, who, as always, is going to have plenty of NFL talent on that defense. He reminds me of Dak Prescott, not just because of Mississippi State, but talking about a big dude. He doesn't mind lowering his shoulder and taking on a linebacker, which you love to see from a quarterback. You know, you don't see that every day. Fitzgerald can play. I think he's going to do enough, and they're going to pull it out on the road at Georgia and see Mississippi State. They could catapult into the top 10 very quickly here.
Yes.
Yep.
Wait, who do you see pulling it out?
I think actually Georgia's going to win. Mississippi State came off that big win last week with LSU. They're both 3-0. Georgia is coming off a win with Notre Dame. I don't know how good they are yet.
Sure.
But I think what it is LSU's that win from Mississippi State over LSU is going to, they're almost going to be riding this high and not come into the game focused. Whereas Georgia's coming in ultra focused because they've had two really weak games and then Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what makes the SEC so great.
Yeah.
You beat a top 10 team at home, and then boom, you got to turn around and play another one the very next week. So those are the two main games going on this weekend. What's kind of a game flying under the radar that you could see a big upset picking? I think you got one in the Pac-12 that might happen.
I do. I have USC losing to Cal. I know USC's been playing really well, but is it Sam Darnold playing really well, or is it USC playing really well? Because Sam Darnold's just been kind of pulling that team like a tractor trailer, and everyone's just kind of holding on to him, and they're getting wins by scoring a lot of points.
Well,
but
in the game last week against Texas, they did struggle at times, and they ended up pulling it out. The game against Texas is not a team that's supposed to come in on the road with a first-year coach and compete like they did. Not to mention SC's already had some trouble with Western Michigan. So I can see this upset brewing too. And Cal, they're not a bad team. They beat Ole Miss.
And they're very familiar with them. Very familiar.
I think that I completely agree with you guys. I think that USC coming out of that last game against Texas, they were getting beat deep, and I think that Cal's, their air raid's just going to plump. They're just going to beat down on USC. I think that USC is going to come and try to show up and play, but I think that their discipline on both defense and offense isn't where it should be right now.
And just one more to add on. I don't think this upset will happen, but keep your eye on it. Washington, who's ranked in the top 5, has to play on the road at Colorado. Boulder's not an easy place to play. High elevation. It'll be a night game there. So we'll see what happens there. If USC were to fall and then Washington to fall in the same weekend, the Pac-12 is going to be turned on its head, and who knows can jump up and win it. A Stanford can come back. Who knows? A lot to get to this weekend. Hopefully you got plenty of time to watch it at home. I'm your host, Joey Caulo, for Ryan Sundeen and Alyanna Harina. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.